If you're wondering whether it's possible for your own sister to steal your father's company while you're standing at his graveside, let me tell you it happened to me. At my father's funeral reception, while people were still offering condolences, my sister Catherine stood up and announced, "As the new CEO, I'll be taking Dad's company in a bold new direction. The board has already approved the transition." Everyone nodded approvingly. I stood there with a plate of untouched food in my hands, feeling the room spin, because I had spent 15 years building that company alongside my father, and he had promised it would be mine. That's when I knew my sister had done something unforgivable. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I'm 63 years old. I spent 20 years as a CPA at a mid-size firm in Portland, Oregon, before my father asked me to join his technology consulting company as chief operating officer. That was in 2009, right after the financial crisis nearly destroyed his business. My sister Catherine is 5 years older, 68, and she'd been working in the marketing department for just 3 years when Dad died. She drove a BMW, lived in a penthouse downtown, and spent most of her time networking at business lunches and tech conferences. We'd never been close. She always felt like Dad favored me, which wasn't true. He just valued reliability over flash. When Dad's Alzheimer's diagnosis came in 2015, Catherine suggested he step down immediately and hire outside management. I refused to let that happen. I moved my life around his appointments. When he forgot how to use his email, I sat with him for hours helping him remember. When he got confused during board meetings, I learned to finish his sentences in a way that made him look sharp. Catherine sent fruit baskets and visited once a month, always bringing expensive gifts he didn't need. Custom leather portfolios, designer watches. Dad would smile and thank her, but after she left, he'd say to me, "Your sister still thinks money solves everything." The 15 years I spent working with Dad were the hardest and most rewarding of my life. We turned that struggling consultancy into a thriving firm worth $2.3 million, with contracts from Nike, Intel, and Columbia Sportswear. I handled operations, finance, and client relationships, while Dad remained the visionary. Even as his memory faded, he could still read a market trend better than anyone I knew. We had a rhythm. I'd brief him every morning on what he needed to remember that day, and he'd give me strategic direction when his mind was clear. In 2022, when Dad knew his Alzheimer's was getting worse, he started recording voice memos on his phone. His neurologist had suggested it as a memory aid, a way to capture thoughts before they vanished. Dad took it further. He recorded conversations, meetings, his wishes for the company. He told me about it one evening in his study. "Sarah, my mind is betraying me, but I want there to be a record of what I actually think, not what people say I think." I helped him set up the system, showed him how to save and organize the files. We backed everything up to a secure cloud account. He made me the only other person with access. One recording from December 2023, 6 months before he died, stayed with me. His voice was clear that day. "This company survives because of Sarah. Catherine is good at appearances, but Sarah understands the work. When I'm gone, the company goes to Sarah. She's earned it 100 times over. Catherine has her success. This should go to the daughter who stayed." Dad died on June 15th, 2024. It was a Saturday morning. I was with him in his home office, where he'd insisted on spending his final weeks, surrounded by the books and papers that defined his life. Catherine arrived an hour after he passed. She'd been at a marketing conference in San Francisco. The funeral was everything Dad would have wanted. Simple, dignified, at the Unitarian Church in Northwest Portland, where he'd been a member for 40 years. Catherine paid for everything, which was generous. She gave a eulogy about Dad, teaching her the value of innovation and taking risks. People cried. I almost believed she'd actually learned those lessons from him. 3 days later, we met with Dad's attorney, Robert Pearson, to discuss the succession plan. Catherine brought her own lawyer, a woman named Jennifer Wu, from a prominent Portland firm. That should have been my first warning. Why would Catherine need separate representation for a straightforward succession? Robert explained that Dad's estate planning was complex but clear. The company shares were held in a trust, and according to the trust documents, I was to receive 75% ownership, and Catherine would receive 25%, along with the option to stay on in marketing or take a buyout. It was fair. More than fair, considering Catherine's minimal involvement. I started crying, even though I'd known it was coming. Catherine's expression didn't change. She just said, "That sounds reasonable." Dad always knew Sarah was the operations person. I should have known that was too easy. For the next month, I grieved. I moved into Dad's office at the company, not because I wanted to claim territory, but because sitting at his desk made me feel closer to him. His reading glasses were still on the credenza. His coffee mug, the one I'd given him that said "World's Okayest Boss," was still on his desk. Our employees were supportive. They'd worked with me for years. They knew who actually ran the company. Catherine called once a week. Brief, professional conversations. "How are you holding up? Do you need help with anything?" She offered to handle the funeral expenses, the estate paperwork. I thought she was being thoughtful. Then came mid-August, exactly 2 months after Dad died. Catherine called and said she wanted to organize a memorial event at the company. "Nothing fancy," she said. "Just the team and some of Dad's longtime clients. A chance to celebrate his legacy and share our vision for the future." It seemed appropriate. I agreed immediately. I spent days preparing. I compiled a video tribute with photos from throughout Dad's career. I arranged for catering from Dad's favorite restaurant. I set up the conference room with his awards and the framed newspaper articles about the company's growth. 50 people came. Our senior staff, major clients, Dad's old friends from the industry. Everyone shared stories about Dad's brilliance, his integrity, his terrible jokes during presentations. Then, after the video tribute, Catherine stood up. She was wearing a sharp black suit, the kind she wore to close major deals. She tapped her wine glass, and the room quieted. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight," she said, with that practice smile she used in client meetings. "Dad would have loved seeing all of you together. As we move forward without him, I have some important news to share about the company's leadership." My stomach tightened. She hadn't mentioned any announcement. After careful consideration and consultation with the board of directors, Catherine continued, "I'm honored to announce that I've been appointed CEO of Mitchell Consulting Group, effective immediately. The board recognizes that in today's market, we need someone with strong marketing vision and industry connections to take us to the next level." She paused, looking directly at me. "Sarah will continue as COO, where her operational expertise is invaluable. Together, we'll honor Dad's legacy by growing this company beyond what he ever imagined." People started applauding. Some were nodding like this made perfect sense. Our business development director stood up and said, "Congratulations, Catherine. This is exactly the kind of bold leadership we need." I couldn't breathe. I sat there, gripping the edge of the conference table, watching my sister accept congratulations while my father's memorial photos flickered on the screen behind her. Finally, I found my voice. "Catherine," I said, and the room went quiet. "Can we speak privately? Now?" We went into Dad's office. My office. The moment the door closed, I turned on her. "What the hell was that? The board appointed you?" "We don't have a board. The company is privately held through Dad's trust. You can't just appoint yourself CEO." Catherine's sympathetic expression melted away. She looked at me with cold calculation. "Actually, Sarah, Dad established a board of directors in 2020 to help with strategic decisions as his Alzheimer's progressed. The board consists of 3 outside advisors, all respected business leaders Dad trusted. Last week, they voted unanimously to name me CEO. She pulled out a folder and handed me a document. "Here's the board resolution, properly executed and notarized." I stared at the paper. It looked official, with signatures from 3 names I vaguely recognized, business associates of Dad's from years ago. "This is impossible. Dad wanted me to run the company." Robert Pearson confirmed it. "The trust documents are clear." "The trust documents give ownership," Catherine said, her voice sharp now. "But Dad's corporate bylaws give the board authority to appoint executive leadership. 2 different things, Sarah. You'll still own your 75% of shares. But I'm running the company. And frankly, it's for the best. You're brilliant at operations, but you don't have the vision to compete in today's market. Dad knew that." "That's a lie," I said, my voice shaking. "Dad said I should run this company. He told me 100 times. Catherine moved toward the door. "Dad said a lot of things in his final years. The Alzheimer's made him confused." This resolution reflects what he wanted when his mind was still sharp. You have two choices: accept this arrangement and continue as COO with a generous salary, or contest it and risk destroying everything Dad built. The board is prepared to vote you out entirely if you make this difficult. She walked out, leaving me standing in my father's office, holding a document that was either legitimate or the most brazen fraud I'd ever seen. I had to find out which. The next morning, I called Robert Pearson. His secretary said he was out of town but could meet Thursday. I made the appointment and spent the next 3 days going through every file in Dad's office, every document in the company's records. I was looking for anything about this supposed board of directors. On Wednesday afternoon, I found Dad's phone in his desk drawer. I'd been charging it occasionally, not wanting to let it die. When I opened it, I remembered the voice memos. There were hundreds of them. I started listening chronologically, working backward from his final weeks. Most were mundane, reminders about meetings, thoughts about client strategies. Then I found recordings from February 2024, 4 months before he died. His voice was weaker but clear. I'm recording this because I'm afraid of what Catherine might do. She came by today with some lawyer, wanted me to sign papers establishing a board of directors. She said it was standard corporate governance, that every company our size should have one, but I could see it in her eyes. She's planning something. I told her no. I told her this company is Sarah's. She's earned it. Catherine doesn't understand this business. She understands marketing campaigns and cocktail parties. Sarah understands the work that matters. My hands were shaking. I kept listening. Another memo from March. Catherine came back with those papers again. She brought 3 business people I used to work with, said they'd be on the board as a favor to me. I got confused. I couldn't remember if I'd already said no. Sarah wasn't there to help me think clearly. I signed something. I don't know what. I need to tell Sarah. I need to tell Robert. But every time I try to remember, it slips away. And then, from April, just 2 months before he died, I'm scared. I found papers Catherine left in my study. Something about CEO appointment procedures. I think she got me to sign something I shouldn't have. My mind was foggy that day. She knows when I'm most confused. She's planning to take the company from Sarah. I need to stop this, but I can't remember how. If anyone finds these recordings, please know, Sarah runs my company. Not Catherine. Never Catherine. I played that recording 3 times, tears streaming down my face. Dad had known. He'd tried to warn me, tried to protect me, but the disease had stolen his ability to act. At my Thursday meeting with Robert Pearson, I brought the phone and a speaker. Robert listened to all 3 recordings, his expression growing darker. Sarah, this is potentially elder abuse. If Catherine pressured your father to sign documents when he was cognitively impaired, and if she knew he was impaired, that's illegal. But proving it is difficult. The board resolution looks legitimate on paper. Those signatures are from real people. Can we call them? I asked. Ask if they actually agreed to this? Robert pulled up his computer and made some calls. The first 2 board members had died in 2022 and 2023. The third, a man named Douglas Chen, was living in Arizona. Robert reached him on the second try. Mr. Chen, this is Robert Pearson, attorney for the Mitchell family. I'm calling about your service on the board of directors for Mitchell Consulting Group. There was a long pause. Then Doug Chen's voice came through the speaker. Board of directors? I haven't served on any boards in 5 years. I certainly never served on anything for Mitchell Consulting. I knew Peter Mitchell back in the day, but we hadn't spoken in years before his death. Who told you I was on a board? Robert and I exchanged looks. Sir, we have a board resolution dated May 2024 with your signature appointing Catherine Mitchell as CEO. You're listed as one of 3 board members. That's impossible. I was in the hospital with pneumonia in May. I didn't sign anything. His voice got sharp. Someone forged my signature? After Robert ended the call, he turned to me. Sarah, I think your sister committed fraud. She created a fictitious board using names of people who were dead or incapacitated, forged their signatures, and used that to seize control of your father's company. I'm calling the Oregon State Bar and the District Attorney's Office. I left Robert's office feeling a tiny spark of hope. When I got back to the company, I went straight to Catherine's office. She was on the phone but waved me in. I waited until she hung up. "Catherine, I spoke to Doug Chen today. He says he never signed any board resolution. He never even knew there was a board." Catherine's face went blank for just a second. Then she recovered. "Doug must be confused. He's in his 80s now. Memory isn't what it used to be." "He's sharp as a tack," I said. "And the other 2 board members are dead. Convenient that you chose people who couldn't contradict you." "You're making wild accusations, Sarah. That resolution is legal and binding. If you continue this crusade, I'll have no choice but to ask the board to remove you from the company entirely." "Is that what you want? To throw away everything Dad built?" "What I want," I said, my voice steady now, "is the truth. And I have Dad's voice recordings. All of them. Including the ones where he talks about you pressuring him to sign papers when he was confused." Catherine's face went pale. "Recordings can be manipulated, edited. They wouldn't hold up in any legal proceeding. Then you have nothing to worry about." I walked out, my heart pounding. The investigation took 4 months. The Oregon Attorney General's office got involved because the fraud crossed into elder financial abuse. They subpoenaed company records, interviewed staff, brought in forensic document examiners. The experts testified that the signatures on the board resolution didn't match the writing samples from the supposed board members. The notary seal was legitimate, but the notary, a woman who worked at Catherine's law firm, admitted under pressure that Catherine had brought her the already signed document and asked her to notarize it without verifying identities. They also discovered that Catherine had been siphoning money from the company for 2 years. Small amounts at first, authorized as marketing expenses that Dad had been too confused to question. Then larger sums once he died. She'd used company funds to pay off personal debts, fund her lifestyle. She'd been counting on taking over the company to cover her tracks. The trial began in January 2025. I had to testify, which meant sitting in that courtroom, looking at my sister across the room, and explaining how she'd manipulated our dying father. The worst part was playing Dad's voice recordings for the jury, hearing his confusion, his fear, his desperate attempts to protect me. Catherine stared at the table the whole time. Her lawyer, Jennifer Wu, tried to claim the recordings were taken out of context, that Dad's Alzheimer's made him paranoid and unreliable. But when the prosecution played the recording where Dad's voice was strongest, explaining exactly how Catherine had pressured him, several jurors were crying. The most damaging testimony came from Catherine's own assistant, a young woman named Maya Patel. Maya had worked for Catherine for 2 years, and she'd kept meticulous records because something had felt wrong. She testified that Catherine had asked her to forge documents before, including expense reports and contract addendums. Maya had refused and thought about quitting but stayed because she wanted to document what was happening. She brought emails, text messages, a whole digital trail of Catherine's deception. The jury deliberated for 8 hours. They found Catherine guilty of fraud, forgery, and elder financial abuse. At sentencing, the judge looked directly at Catherine. "Miss Mitchell, you betrayed your dying father and attempted to steal your sister's inheritance. You forged legal documents, created fictitious board members, and manipulated a vulnerable adult for financial gain. This court has a responsibility to send a clear message about elder abuse." Catherine was sentenced to 6 years in federal prison. Jennifer Wu received a suspension from the Oregon State Bar for her role in the scheme. The judge also ordered Catherine to repay all the money she'd stolen from the company, plus damages and legal fees. After the sentencing, I stood in the courthouse hallway, emotionally exhausted. I'd won, but it felt hollow. Catherine was my sister. We'd grown up together, learned to ride bikes together, shared Christmases and birthdays. When had she become someone capable of this? A few months after the trial, I received a letter from Catherine, forwarded through her attorney. It was 3 pages long, mostly excuses and justifications. But near the end, she wrote something that might have been genuine. "I convinced myself that Dad's favoritism toward you was unfair, that I deserved more after years of being overlooked. But the truth is, you earned everything you got by being there, by doing the work, by sacrificing. I tried to take a shortcut, and I destroyed everything, including any chance of ever having a relationship with my only sister. I'm sorry." I read it once and filed it away. Maybe someday I'll be able to forgive her. But not yet. I still run Mitchell Consulting Group. We've grown to $3.1 million in value. I promoted Maya Patel to head of operations. She earned it by having the courage to speak up. I've brought on real board members now, people I trust, who actually show up to meetings and provide genuine guidance. We've landed new contracts, expanded into cybersecurity consulting, and maintained every client relationship Dad built. Sometimes I sit in my office, which I finally redecorated but kept Dad's coffee mug on the desk, and I listen to his voice recordings. Not the painful ones about Catherine, but the ones where he talks about the company, about his pride in what we built together. In one of my favorites, from 2018 when his mind was still sharp, he says, "Sarah understands what matters. It's not about being the flashiest or having the best marketing. It's about doing the work right, taking care of your people, and building something that lasts." That's what I'm doing, building something that lasts. The employees who applauded Catherine at that memorial event were embarrassed when the truth came out. Most of them apologized. Our business development director brought me coffee for a week straight and kept saying, "I should have questioned it. You'd been here the whole time." I told him not to blame himself. Fraudsters are convincing. That's why fraud works. If there's anything I learned from this nightmare, it's that you have to document everything, especially when dealing with vulnerable adults. Dad's voice recordings saved me. Without them, it would have been my word against Catherine's manufactured evidence. I speak at elder law conferences now, sharing our story. I tell people, if your parent has dementia or Alzheimer's, encourage them to record their thoughts, their wishes, their clear-minded directives. Create a paper trail. Don't assume family members will do the right thing. I'm 63 now, running the company my father wanted me to have, making decisions he'd be proud of, surrounded by people who chose to stay after the scandal because they believed in the work we do. Sometimes I'm lonely. Catherine and I don't speak. She has 4 more years in prison. Maybe when she gets out, we'll find a way to be sisters again. But I'm not holding my breath. I have Dad's old friends who call to check on the business. I have employees who've become family. I have clients who stuck with us through the chaos because they trusted me. And I have the satisfaction of knowing that when it mattered most, I fought for what was right. I honored Dad's wishes. I didn't let Catherine steal what I'd earned. Every morning, I make coffee in the break room. Dad insisted we build so people wouldn't feel stuck at their desks. I walk through the office and check in with my team. And I'm grateful. Grateful for the 15 years I had working alongside Dad. Grateful that his clarity of mind in those recordings gave me the evidence I needed. Grateful that justice was served. And grateful that I get to build on his legacy the right way, with integrity and hard work, not manipulation and fraud. The company is mine. Not because I schemed or forged documents or exploited my father's illness, but because I earned it by showing up every single day for 15 years. Dad knew that. Even as Alzheimer's stole his memories, he knew that. And now the courts, the industry, and everyone who matters knows it too. I keep one of Dad's voice recordings saved on my phone. It's from his last birthday, when we surprised him with a cake in the office. His voice is warm and clear. I'm the luckiest man alive. I got to build something meaningful and share it with my daughter. Sarah, you've made every day of this worth it. I play it sometimes when I'm having a hard day. It reminds me why I fought so hard, why I'm still fighting, and why I'll never stop building what he started.